Today, we're excited to have Linda Yaccarino, CEO of X, with us to chat about some really timely topics. First up, we'll dive into the world of citizen journalism versus traditional media. It's a hot topic, especially considering how platforms like X are changing the game. We'll discuss X's monumental impact on the 2024 elections. It's fascinating to see how a digital platform can sway public opinion and influence political outcomes. X is in an exciting phase right now, almost like a blue ocean of opportunities, especially with its focus on video content. We're going to get into why that's a priority and what it means for users and creators. But it's not all smooth sailing. Countries like Brazil have pushed back, even banning X. We'll explore what led to these decisions and what they could mean for the future of global digital platforms. And of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, Elon Musk. His involvement with X and his political gambles during the recent US election have stirred up quite the conversation. So buckle up as we unpack all this and more about the future of X under Linda's leadership. It's going to be a compelling blend of insights, controversies, and predictions.
When a sitting president decided to step away from his campaign re-election efforts, he posted it on X. A full 30 minutes before any legacy media company could get up and running.
I think exactly the first thing I wanted to focus on is citizen journalism versus mainstream media. I think you're the perfect person to ask that question. And you know, I'm glad you're doing this interview, considering how tough it is for anyone to be able to speak to you. So I've got so many questions, but I do want to focus on that journey because, you know, you saw Axios what he said. I'll read it out for anyone listening that hasn't seen the clip. He starts off saying it's something right. He says everything we do is under fire, and then he goes on and says he starts attacking Elon. Elon sits on Twitter every day or X saying like we are the media, you are the media. My message to Elon is bullshit. You are not the media. You having a blue check mark, a Twitter handle of 300 words of cleverness doesn't make you a reporter. You don't do that by popping off on Twitter. You don't do that by having an opinion. You do it by doing the hard work. Your thoughts on that outburst?
I have a lot of thoughts on that outburst, but I think that reaction is not really dissimilar from my own journey. You're sitting here talking to somebody who has spent almost their entire career in legacy media. And, you know, I spent the large part of my career kind of for an analogy, stacking the proverbial sandbags of the future or innovation not overtaking us, right? And I got tired of that. And I wanted to leapfrog that to go to a place that had their hand in shaping the future of media, because it's no surprise to anyone where consumption is going. When you look at legacy media brands, consumption is going in one direction. Technology has liberated information, liberated data, where the once legacy gatekeepers who presented a one-way street of filtered information, clearly designed to influence the way you think, how you think, is no longer sustainable. And it is now in the power of the user's hands, who, like you say, right? You say you're not the arbiter of truth, your listeners or your viewers are. And the power is in their hands to dissect and find out the truth. And that's what X provides. X provides a global town square for people to congregate and sift through truth. And they can identify misinformation almost in real time. And that's where the legacy power brokers get frustrated, like to those comments, because X starves them of that power. And when you're starved of that power, you have reactions like that. And that's what's the beautiful thing about X. And I will tell you, that genie is out of the bottle. That train has left the station. And the users are, in fact, the media now.
And we're seeing that with the first, congratulations. The metrics speak for themselves. I think a lot of other social media platforms are either struggling or growth is slowing, yet you guys are breaking records month after month. There's something that Emma Tucker from Wall Street Journal, the chief editor, said, and she kind of admitted to exactly what you're saying. They're not hiding it anymore. I think it's as you said, the genie's out of the bottle. She literally said, and that was yesterday, we were the gatekeepers and we had ownership of the facts. Anything that New York Times or Wall Street Journal said back then was fact. Now people go through different sources and question everything, which is where X comes in. Was there a specific moment? So for me, the moment that I kind of started my distrust in mainstream media, one important event was when NBC wrote a hit piece on me. And not a hit piece, I think if there's a hit piece based on fact, I respect it. They need to get clicks. But then it was an anti-Elon journalist who's been writing things against Elon for a long time. And they used me obviously to target Elon, which is a habit of theirs. So that was the moment for me. I'm like, wow, because I like the NBC, but I realized not all journalists are the same. Was there a certain event that started, that got you to question the level of trust you had in mainstream media? And slowly began your shift to the position you have today?
Well, I have to tell you, I think that just think about the stunning statement you made in the lead up to your question, which was the old mainstream media had ownership of the facts. That's quite a stunning acknowledgement, because how do you own facts when you and I are sitting here today, when we know numbers and facts are manipulated to serve a particular narrative? We all just came out of a lengthy, way too lengthy election season where we were all victimized by that. So I think anyone that's acknowledging that there was once an ownership of the facts should frighten all of us. And we should have a radical dedication and conviction to the truth. And the biggest difference, you asked me what attracted me to come to X. I mean, obviously, we should talk about the importance of protecting free speech around the world. But when you talk about a radical dedication to the truth, that's quite a pure and noble ambition. And when you combine that with the impact of technology and how people want to consume their information in real time, that's the power of X, because culture breaks, big moments break. You asked, was there a specific moment? I would say the last 6 months were almost like a collision of many, many big moments, right? But if you talk about one of the most seminal moments that defined the importance of X in the world, think about it. All eyes in the world were on X with the interest for the US election, right? And when a sitting president decided to step away from his campaign re-election efforts, he posted it on X. That's a pretty important moment. What was additionally important is that the world came together and was sharing their thoughts and feelings about that on X a full 30 minutes before any legacy media company could get up and running and talking about it, or let's call it like on air, right? So when you think about that and you think about the importance of culture breaking in real time in the platform and having people being able to react to it, those are the kind of moments that you say, you know what? Consumption really has shifted forever. And two other things. I would talk about the awful first assassination attempt on President Trump. People all over the world coming together to share their thoughts and feelings in real time on X. There's no surrogate for that real-time conversation. It really doesn't matter. You can bring up a lot of other platforms. The communication back and forth on X, there's no surrogate. And I would land, really on the last thing, which is when you think about, these seminal moments that have defined X and you experienced in real time election night on X. It was a global gathering to see what the most consequential election in the world was taking place. That's why usage is surging. That's why the platform is exploding with growth.
I think I realized that during the coverage of FTX when it collapsed. I did the live coverage.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, I wasn't expecting it. And then, I had a lot of journalists reach out to us for facts, and we had people leaking stories, whistleblowers on stage. So that was my first instance. And then what people don't realize, people outside the US, is that X has become the single source of truth in countries that no one even pays attention to. Right now, there's people in Pakistan, the Prime Minister's office, they're messaging me saying, Mario, they're blocking X, we don't have any way to communicate. And the people on the streets. In Brazil, they went on the attack, and Elon fought back. My question to you is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the CCDH, some random organization in the UK, having on their agenda, kill Twitter. When that came across your desk, how did you find out about it? What was the first thing that came to mind?
The first thing that came to mind, believe it or not, was actually a validation that what we've known for a long time was entirely true, right? And I go back to what we talk about all the time is a radical dedication to the truth and an unwavering conviction to protecting free speech around the world. But whether you bring up, there's many activist organizations that have attempted to put on their agenda. I'm sure there's others that says, kill Twitter or kill X and invite other people to do so. And it's because of everything that we're talking about. They've lost control of the narrative because the people are in charge. And what's so interesting as business has rebounded on X, because so many of our partners, stakeholders, our advertising are realizing, if you just look at what happened in the election and you think about in business, and I'm sure you've heard this, you have many businesses, right? So whether you're running a company, whether you're a chief marketing officer, or you're just selling stuff, you want to meet your consumers or your customers where they are. And everything we're talking about demonstrates where they are is on X in real time, enjoying, discussing, debating all types of real-time events that happen. And I think that's the key thing that you have to think about. And one thing I think about a lot, especially recently, when we look at the rebound of the company, just a couple of weeks ago, Advertising Age and the Harris poll came out with a study, a poll, a survey, that communicated the number one brand for Gen Z of choice is X.
Wow.
So talk about where the future is going, right?
That's an important metric no one talks about.
I
didn't even know that.
Well, that's because organizations like those ones you mentioned don't want that. It doesn't fit their narrative.
They look
right?
at the different metrics that don't make sense.
Yeah, and if you look at Gen Z and where that goes, right, that's the future, that's where it's going. And when you look at a lot of the legacy media organizations, the median age is much older, right? They haven't embraced where consumption is going. And what I really wish to happen, a lot of those publications should embrace X for its distribution potential. Look how successful you are on X.
It's crazy they're not.
Right? The distribution potential is actually unlimited. And to embrace it and to embrace your consumers in that way, particularly as I keep talking about the power of Gen Z and what's next, that's really what we should be focused on, and not that they've lost control of the narrative.
I think people underestimate, I don't understand why, they underestimate the reach you can have on X for creators. I was speaking to someone 2 days ago and I said, X is literally, when you have a social media platform just starting out, it's a blue ocean, you've got so much potential.
Yes.
X is, because you're rebuilding the structure, the foundation of the business, in a way, it's become like a startup, which is a massive opportunity for any creator to get reach. Our reach now, when I say to people, sometimes I struggle to believe it, our impressions per month on my account is one account, 2 to 3 billion impressions.
Yes.
How crazy is that? I sometimes struggle to understand how many people we're reaching around the world. And then obviously you've got spaces, you've got the video interviews like this one. But talking about the world, how do you deal with what's happening in the UK, with what's happening in Brazil? Brazil was crazy to me. The fact that they shut down X and they went after SpaceX, they went after your employees. Can you tell me more, just that the journey of fighting the fourth biggest democracy in the world?
Yeah.
Because you're fighting for free speech, but you're also running a business. It's just such a tricky position to be in at times.
Well, it's a really tricky position to be in. And it was one of the most challenging periods I know I've certainly gone through in my career, because to your point, it was challenging for our employees. It was challenging for the people of Brazil. And I certainly, as you could see demonstrated by only X, stood up to protect the freedom of speech, but the people of Brazil. And we were going to do whatever it took to make sure that we elevated the conversation, that the freedom of speech was so fragile in Brazil. And you think about it, it's to your comments a few minutes ago, it's fragile all over the world right now. What's going on in London, in France, what's gone on in Ireland, what's gone on in Australia. And Brazil was really one of the latest examples. And had it not been for X, the conversation and the importance of that conversation would not have been elevated. And we never actually wavered for 1 second. If we had to shut down in Brazil, we had to shut down in Brazil. You know, there's some points in your career, in your life, and you run your business, because you said you're running a business too. But what is X without its core value of protecting free speech around the world? Because for democracies to thrive and for democracies to be successful, the core foundational contributor to that is the protection of freedom of speech. And for you to create this global town square doesn't exist if you don't have that first most important building block of freedom of speech. So for us, while it was one of the most difficult times, I will never forget the day I had to communicate to our staff that we were closing down. And because it was uncertain, it was always our intention to come back and serve the people of Brazil. But in those moments, in that moment, we weren't sure. And it was one of the most emotional, difficult things I know I've ever done in my career. But the great news is, elevated the conversation, and we're back. And we're back, and the people of Brazil are thriving on X. And I would also be confident to communicate that the importance of protecting the freedom of speech means something very, very different to everyone in Brazil today.
I say this to anyone that brings up the discussion. Have you ever seen protesters wearing a t-shirt with a social media logo or the logo of an owner of a social media? Have you ever seen Mark Zuckerberg on a t-shirt?
Well,
protesters in Brazil had X on their t-shirt.
I know.
Politicians, I can't remember the gentleman's name. I had him on the show, and Bolsonaro's team, former President Bolsonaro, I wish I remember the congressman's name, but they were thanking X, thanking Elon on camera. They were themselves wearing t-shirts with X on there. So X has become more than a news platform and more than a social media platform.
X is a purpose, right? X provides a purpose, a voice, a megaphone for truth and the freedom of speech around the world. In Brazil, like when you look at the sentiment, the fandom, the ferocious loyalty of the users on the platform is why they're proud to wear a shirt with the logo on it. It's why we have almost 600 million monthly active users on the platform, right? So you have 600 million advocates around the world that wake up every day. X has reached kind of what I like to call FOMO status. You wake up in the morning, you got to check what's going on all around the world, or for some of us, guilty to admit, in the middle of the night, where you're like, just another.
Elon 3 days ago. He went crazy. He wouldn't sleep. My team was like, Elon, go to sleep.
It's sometimes you have reached addiction level status, but that's when you have a world of users where it's not just an app, it's actually part of your life. And that's what X has become. And over time, since now just 2 years since acquisition, right? So you have the core foundational value of protecting free speech around the world, creating the global town square, but you also have a scope of ambition and a pace of innovation that is like no other company in the world. It doesn't matter what business sector you're in. So you're building all these incredible conveniences. We've shipped over 250 products since the inception. You've been a beneficiary of it. So when you think about what was once a 140 character messaging app, I think at time of acquisition it was 280 characters by then, but we barely had more than a couple of minutes of video that we had the capabilities. It was actually one of the subject matter of discussion that I had when I first met Elon, and it was about video. And I was in my old gig at the time, but it was like, we have to prioritize video, and now look where we are.
Oh, that was your idea?
I wouldn't say it was my idea. I would say that it was a joint discussion about the power of video, and came up in the subject of one of the first conversations that I had with Elon. But now look where we are. Barely 2 years later, you're up to over 4 hours of video. You could post a documentary, 4 episodes of a latest streaming series. So the video, that's why video consumption is up over 43% year over year. We have audio video calling. Grok has exploded onto the marketplace. Q1 25, we are looking to launch payments in the US. So when you bottle all that up and you look at the scope of the ambition, the pace of the innovation, and you marry that with purpose, that's where you're getting these 600 million people all over the world to be sheer and utter advocates.
Add payments with free speech, you're becoming a fighter for freedom, because payments is, obviously I'm pretty deep in crypto as well, so is Elon, and payments is another way people are getting censored as well, especially in other countries. So I think adding payments into X is going to be, so it's going to be the first quarter of next year.
In the US, that's what we're targeting on launching in the US. And imagine what this capability will provide. You will be able to live most of your financial life on the platform. You'll be making an even better living on the platform, so it will be a boon for creators, but also for our users. You're building an app that people will grow to have different expectations of a social media app, right? That's number one. Number two, you will have such a sheer and utter convenience of a utility of offerings that you'll spend more time on the platform. Right? So we know people spend so much time on the platform because sports and X are inextricably linked. But think about all the other things that we're talking about, from gaming to video all the way to payments, and have a tool like Grok to use for your AI needs. When you think about all of those things in one, there's no other company that's innovating at the speed at which we're innovating. And you think, this is the most incredible new company, energized startup that is unimaginable to most people.
I like to use the word startup. That goes back to my initial point. It is like a startup, and it doesn't suffer from innovator's dilemma, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
Talking about different products, what about XTV? Is there any updates on that front?
Yeah, XTV is maturing and sophisticating at equal light speed, like I talked about. So the XTV app, which is available in a variety of places right now, whether it's Samsung or Video or Google or Amazon Fire, you can access and actually take your app, your feed, and cast it up to the big screen in your home or the screen on your lap. So imagine another demonstration of how consumption has changed forever. And I think a good thing to point out of a recent example of what it's going to be like all day, every day, is the presidential debate that happened between Harris and Trump. Okay? For the first time, you could live stream the debate and be in your feed and live conversation at the same time on the big screen in your home. So imagine when that goes wide and is fully available to over 500 million users around the world. That's a pretty exciting future, and it's right upon us.
There's another thing that Elon teased in his tweets. But yeah, so
I try to keep up with them all. So I'm hoping I saw that one.
I know. Have you heard about the X phone? Has he brought that up at all?
I see it a lot in posts. I see a lot of people wishing and hoping that happens. But that remains to be seen. But I saw this really funny meme the other day, and it was a kind of caricature of Elon the other night when he was posting away and his phone was actually flaming and on fire. So I'm not sure if that was the prototype of the phone, but that remains to be seen.
In terms of Elon's tweets, it seems to be a lot of us do learn things from his tweets. Because I've had Walter Isaacson on the show. One thing I was wondering is when Elon posts, is he being calculated in what he posts, or is he literally posting what he feels or thinks? And in his interview with you, he said that so first Walter says he actually posts what he thinks. He's being as honest as one can be. And then in when you interviewed Elon, he also said he wants to be treated like anyone else when posting. He wants to be held in the same regard, which is a great thing. I don't think you can disagree with that. But has there been times where you also said there are times after you told Elon, can you please stop posting after 3 a.m.? Can you give me some examples of when Elon was either annoyed at someone and post something, you wake up in the morning and then you have to call Elon?
Well,
and say,
if you remember that, he actually bristled a little bit at that question. He saw the value of it. There's actually a big story, or a story, I think it was in Walter's book, of when they actually locked up his phone one night. But to your comment, Elon lives out loud, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing. And he really does post what he thinks. And he posts his musings on life or a variety of things that happen. I find it actually quite inspirational, right? And with over 200 million followers, a lot of people feel that same way. And they learn a lot, they see a lot, and they're exposed to a world of someone who just wants to be treated exactly like them. He's held to the same standards. You see some of his posts are community noted. But I have to tell you, over time, there is such value in the consequential contributions of Elon in his daily life that I'll take all of those same posts all day, every day, because there, by the grace of God, go I. I don't write perfect posts every single day. And I think it's high time, especially post this election. I think we've learned a lot, that the days of cancel culture are behind us, and that we're in a world now of respecting alternative or different points of view. When we talk about the success of freedom of speech, has to be when somebody you disagree with says something you disagree with. That you might be able to bucket all of those posts in. And again, a cornerstone of the company purpose, which I think is important, that everyone, no matter who you are, has the same right to post what they think and feel.
What would you say, and it's more of a personal question, what would you say is, give us an idea of an event that happened behind the scenes that really shook you or shook Elon up? My guess would probably be Brazil, but I could be way off. Is there a story giving people a peek of the difficulty of what you guys are fighting for? Because I think people I'm deep in the weeds, so I can get an idea of the fights you have to fight.
Yeah, so Brazil, definitely I would say in the top couple. I think October 7th. October 7th would be my number one. My number one because I was under 6 months at the company. It was the first global happening where we had to activate a crisis protocol at the company. And it was a time where we all came together as a new company and realized how consequential it became to combat anti-Semitism on the platform. And that things we were doing, things we had to newly do, learn, work with law enforcement all over the world, work with military all over the world, work with a variety of organizations to protect Jewish people on that awful day. We learned how important it was for X to set the example for many to follow. So that was a really big deal. And then I would so think about those consequential things. And you're confronted when you're an employee at X, you're confronted with consequential things all day, every day, because of the meaningful nature of the platform. But when you go to you're running a business or business decisions you have to make. You brought up the CCDH, and there have been other business issues that have come up that we've had to confront when there were unfortunate business decisions being made that were designed to starve or stifle X. And what these people didn't realize is that they're trying to starve and stifle X, and X is going nowhere, let's be realistic. But they're actually trying to starve and stifle citizens of the world from having access to real-time information and to respect them enough to make decisions on their own. And that was what is quite stunning and what has been really meaningful and actually motivational for me to make sure that I, in every way, shape, or form or decision that I make, ensure that those kind of stuff, that nonsense, stops. And that's what helps me show up for work every day.
Yeah, I remember the video of Elon. He was really upset when he said, "Go fuck yourself" to advertisers. Remember that clip?
I remember the clip. I was sitting in the front
Oh, you
row.
were there?
I was kind of waving, hey. Yeah.
But you could see the pain in his voice. I've had Elon on the show. It's been, obviously, you speak to him almost daily, if not daily, but I've had him on the show 5-6 times, and
Yeah.
I've had him during different events, during the Twitter files, during
Yeah.
the FTX collapse, and there are during Brazil when that got shut down, and there's just times where you hear it in his voice, is that
Yes.
it's a struggle. Like, his fight is very difficult. People like to make fun of, or joke, not make fun of, joke about when Elon and Tucker were on the show. And Tucker asked him what happens if Trump loses. And Elon jokingly said, "I'm fucked. How long will I be in prison for? Will my family see me?" Said it as a joke. But I don't think people understand how, I wouldn't say close, but how serious it got in that fight. Having advertisers coalesce together to starve the company, having organizations like the CCDH literally kill Twitter. I know that Elon, he said it on my show, I remember once he said, "I will never kill myself." So he's expressing that, he's got threats to his life, it increases security. If you don't mind me asking, because I know you're very private about your personal life, but my question is more about the impact that fight had on you personally. Have you had to increase security? Have you received, I was talking to Congresswoman Mace yesterday, and she's telling me about all the death threats she's receiving. Has that struggle impacted you on a personal level?
I'll get to that in a second. I think what's really important to comment on are, the comments you referenced that Elon has made, also to his comments about what would happen if the election went another way. The way I translate that is to unbelievable courage to stand up for what you believe in. And the fact that Elon initially and singularly stood up in that way inspired many, right? But there was incredible risk to that. And the amount of pushback and hate that ensued, I think, is a stain on our culture and civilization. And I feel really strongly about that. But as it relates to me specifically, yes, flying close to the sun or living in the halo or in the orbit of Elon, it happens. But I think people have learned, particularly in the last year and a half, because when I first joined the company, there were a few skeptics that said, here's this lady from Legacy Media, is she all in on the mission? So I think they figured that out by now. But it did have some impact on my family, and I could talk about something specifically, which was when the CCDH thing was going on, and then the GARM lawsuit happened, and I knew there were things that were going to come out of that. I mean, I had to sit down and kind of have a family meeting and say, we're going to go to next level now. There's going to be impact from pushback from people, because when you challenge the media complex in this instance, and you challenge legacy, there are aggressive reactions to it. So you need to make sure that your core home base is all in with you. And what is that saying? If you don't stand for anything, you stand for nothing. And this was the singular choice for me. It's why I came to the company. I believed in the mission. And again, I won't stop until that nonsense and that illegal activity is behind us.
I feel like the more they target you, the more they drive you. And you and others, and me included. So when I got the Brazil launched a federal investigation into Elon. They dragged it into me. I'm not sure if you saw it among all the other noise.
Yeah.
And what happens is when they do that, it actually drives you to fight further. So I started being even more vocal. And I feel that journey with you, because obviously I've seen your interviews from the get-go. And I feel, and I could be wrong, you came in as a business person, focused on advertising, run the business. And now I have a feeling that in another few months, people will have your picture on the street as well, because now you're fighting that same mission. That's how it feels watching you from the outside.
Well, I thank you for that. I would wear that achievement like a badge of honor. And on that badge is X, which represents a lot. And I would really be proud of that accomplishment, because protecting the fragile state of the freedom of speech around the world is a pretty noble cause. But when you think about, if we wrap up all the things we talked about and you combined the innovation that we talked about and the growth of the platform, think about it. We're also talking about that the freedom of speech has actually turned out to be good for business. So it's a big concept to say, okay, we see the rebound of the business, but look what we've accomplished along the way. And that's a pretty cool thing to accomplish.
I feel like he keeps gambling. Obviously, with Trump's support, how he went all in, it was a gamble. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then I'm like, okay, holy crap, you're right again. And with his fight for free speech, like, you're going to get banned in Brazil, you're going to go that far. And then it paid off. People in Brazil now are fighting for the cause rather than just fighting for a social media platform.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about another recent event as a last point to ask your thoughts as someone that comes from NBC Universal. And now you've got Elon again tweeting, him and Donald Trump Jr. about potentially buying MSNBC. Have you had a chance to speak to him about this?
Well, I would say maybe we exchanged some posts together about worlds colliding, right? So worlds colliding. Think about the trajectory of the legacy media business. And I think it's been a little bit of a folly. But quite frankly, when you look at the state of consumption that we talked about, but what X has become and that it's growing and the vibrancy of that and what the consumer wants today, and embracing citizen journalism, really supporting independent journalists, right? So there's yourself, think about, I posted today about Catherine Herridge. That woman is a free speech warrior. And look at her, similar story to me. Her work, more consequential historically, but she goes from a legacy media company and comes to X and is thriving there. And she's a real demonstration of, obviously she's also committed to protecting free speech, but it's this journalistic curiosity that consumers are so starved for, because a controlled, lopsided narrative is what the legacy media has become. So again, Elon may have a different vision, but I'm not sure that's realistically in the future. But again, I'm here for it. So I'm ready to go, and I'm somewhat experienced at it. So let's see.
Next week, we'll see tweets about the acquisition offer for MSNBC and a new phone coming out next year. My last question, Linda, is where do you see X a year from now, realistically? Considering the business aspect of it, the Everything Act and the Town Hall. So I feel like there's two paths. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how they collide. The path of the fight for truth and the path of becoming the Everything app.
Yeah, I'm not sure they collide. I would say they're exponentially all better together, right? So we talked about the initial or near-term adversity, right? With legacy media pushback, institutions trying to starve the platform, and that's all being surfaced, right? That is in parallel with protecting free speech around the world, right? But consumption is only going in one direction, and that's going to leave X to thrive. And when you look at, you want to think about fast forward a year. Fast forward a year from now, you have video in full bloom. You have an app that some of those other smaller apps that you mentioned or that has been mentioned before will only have a millifraction of the capabilities of what X is. You have the TV app, which is going to house more and more video and content, so a full consumption experience is going to exist. And then you have payments that have launched, right? So you have, where we go to next globally, and you're living your financial life on the platform. It could mean investments, it could mean trades, but you're going to see more and more things like last week that we launched the NFL portal, right? So you have the biggest sports brand in the world combined with the biggest communication platform in the world in X coming together to bring, specifically in the US, you bring all of their favorite sport all in one place, right? In real time. There's no surrogate for that. No one else can do it. Next comes the NBA, then EPL, then the world is our oyster in becoming the world's largest stadium, and I'm just talking about sports. So can you imagine what's next? So I think it's a good example of we can't even imagine what's next, but the building blocks and pieces are in place.
Linda, I really enjoyed this discussion, to say the least. Like when you walked in and had a necklace with free speech, I mean, it speaks louder than anything else I could say. And I really appreciate the fight you and Elon and others are fighting. It's been an incredible journey, and somehow it's all working for the best, and the numbers, and I'm assuming revenue is an indicator of that. So thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Thank you for being here. The chair I sit in at X, it's an honor of a lifetime. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Linda.